Well, hello there, everybody. This is Mr. Perry, and today we're going to go over active voice versus passive voice and overly wordy sentences. I know that these are two areas many of you guys are hoping to work on second semester, so let's go ahead and look at what they are and how we can fix them. So, quick overview. First off, it's important to know going into this that many high school students write using passive voice. We speak very often using passive voice, and so very often these things translate into our writing. It is a common thing, so don't feel, at all, upset with yourself if you know you are guilty of this. Like I say, it's very common. Many high school students also pack sentences with unnecessary wording. And what I mean by that is it's extra words and extra phrases that are intended to make the sentence longer and appear more complex. As we start to transition from high school level writing to college level writing, very often we notice that college level writing has longer sentences. So it's kind of a natural thing to become unnecessarily wordy if our goal is to create longer sentences. So, the college level writing isn't defined by longer sentences. Sometimes you have more complex sentence structures, yes, but college level writing also has to, it has to make sense. You don't want it to be overly wordy. And there's this word we're going to talk about today called concision, being concise with our language, which is addressed there. So in order to progress towards college level writing, students should aim to write in the active voice while also learning how to eliminate or minimize wordiness. So the first thing we have to do is look at what is passive voice. In order to demonstrate that, we'll look at a common question that we're familiar with, except it's phrased in the passive voice. Why was the road crossed by the chicken? Now when you hear that out loud, we're like, wait a second, that doesn't even sound right. That's because it's in the passive voice. All right, passive voice, by definition, places the object of a sentence in the position of the subject. All right, and the object in this sentence is the road. The subject is the chicken. And when you switch those around and you put the object first and the subject last, it sounds weird. Natural sentence order in the English language is subject, verb, object. But again, passive voice flips these things around, okay? You've got the chicken at the end of the sentence, and you've got the object at the beginning and the verb in the same place, okay? So that's what passive voice looks like, and that's kind of how it sounds. All right, so let's look at some other examples. From one of the online resources here, they have this kind of basic definition or basic example. In 1935, Ethiopia was invaded by Italy. That is what they would call overly wordy and passive. Revised version would be in 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia. Now you've got the subject invading the object instead of the object being invaded by the subject. Again, this is active voice, all right? Look at some examples from some of your guys' essays. Let's see, sympathy was gained from viewers as Knox and Solicito reached out directly to the audience to elucidate their love story as well as their dual convictions that separated them behind bars. So you read that sentence and it just sounds maybe like it's a little overly wordy, it seems like. And even up here, throughout the whole documentary, a pathos-style approach was demonstrated. Even this has elements of what we would call unnecessary wordiness and some passive voice. Let's look at another example. Okay, here we go. Crime scene footage and pictures of the murder weapon were provided, as well as details describing the murder were explained, giving an inside look into the night the murder took place. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to hear it and see it a little bit. If not, I'll make it a little bit more clear to you in a second. Here's another sentence I recently read from a student essay. The project at hand was explained to them and a plan of action was established. Okay, so these are all passive voice or sentences that are phrased in the passive voice. Let's look at how we might, let's look also at wordiness, and then we'll look at how we fix them. So for wordiness, wordiness is a related issue. It's not the exact same problem as passive voice, but it's a related issue. Sentences that are overly wordy, again, it becomes a little bit more difficult to figure out what they're trying to say, and a lot of times these extra words will clutter up the meaning of our sentences. So we need to aim for what's called concision in our writing. Being concise means using only the words that matter in order to make your point. So check this sentence out. Because of the fact that so many Americans are offended by the existence of hate groups in society, several groups have formed over the years to take action against these hate groups and to help eliminate their messages of racial superiority, which is a really crucial step to take towards achieving peace. Now that's a really long sentence. It says it has an important main idea, but it's really kind of hard to figure out what that main idea is at times, again, because of the unnecessarily high word count, which in this case is 50 words. So we'll look at how we would eliminate that. Here's the exact same sentence, exact same ideas, far fewer words, less than half, only 23 words on this one. In recent years, many organizations formed to combat messages of racial superiority spread by hate groups in America, while also promoting societal peace. The language here is much more concise, and it's much easier to see what the writer is trying to say. All right, so now we're going to look at how to fix passive voice. We know what the problem is now, so now we've got to figure out, well, how do we go about fixing it? So there's basically two steps. To fix passive voice, the first thing you need to do is to look for a form of the verb to be. And so that includes the word is, are, am, was, were, has been, have been, had been, will be, will have been, or being. So if you see the word to be, or if you see any of these forms of the verb to be, especially if they're followed by a past participle, a verb that ends in ed. If you see that, then chances are you're using passive voice, and you should try to eliminate it or minimize it. It is impossible, by the way, to write a essay that never uses any of these words. All right, you're going to have plenty of times where you need to use these words, but you don't want to use them so often. I guess that's the main point, is to make sure you're only using them when necessary, while also maintaining active voice. So if you see these popping up, for instance, the metropolis has been scorched by the dragon's fiery breath. Oh no, not the metropolis. So we see has been, which is one of our words here, and then scorched, which is an ed verb. That's a past participle. So this is classic passive voice right here. So here is our subject, and here is our verb, and here is our object. So if we flip those around and create natural sentence order, it becomes the dragon's fiery breath scorched the metropolis. Now we have active voice. Down here, when her house was invaded by suitors, Penelope had to think of ways to delay her remarriage. So again, was invaded. Here's the word was. We know that's on our list to look out for, and then invaded is past participle. So again, can we eliminate that? Can we move suitors to the beginning and make this natural sentence order? When suitors invaded Penelope's house, she had to think of ways to delay her remarriage. That's, again, what we're aiming for when we're trying to write in this kind of academic and formal tone. Another thing to look for is to watch out for the phrase by blank or by the blank, especially at near the end of sentences. Very often passive voice will end with by the something, or in this case, by something. So there's a couple of, again, some trigger words you can look for, some keywords you can look out for when you're trying to eliminate this. And as for how to fix wordiness, it's almost impossible to cover all of the circumstances that can create wordiness in a video like this. However, there are certain things you can look out for that would help. Number one, pretty clear here, but avoid redundancy. Try to watch out for redundancy in wording or ideas. Try not to repeat words too often. Try to not repeat phrases too often. Always try to move your language forward. Always try to move the ideas forward. Try not to dwell too much on the same word or the same idea for too long. Another good thing to look out for is to avoid, if you can, starting too many sentences with there are, there is, this is, or it is. Very often, if you have a lot of sentences that start with these phrases, you'll have wordiness. Some other phrases to look out for. The reason why is that this is a subject that, in spite of the fact that due to the fact that this is a big one. I see this very often in student writing. In the event that, because of the fact that this is another big one that I often see in student writing, and then, until such time as or by means of. Let's see. Final advice. Big thing to keep in mind is that these skills take time to develop. It takes a long time to develop consistently writing in the active voice, and it takes a long time to learn how to minimize overly wordy sentences. So just know that it's something you're going to have to continue to watch out for and to revise your essays for. Almost everybody is guilty of having too many forms of the verb to be in his or her writing, so you can always look for any variation of the verb to be, and maybe just go paragraph by paragraph and count them in each paragraph and consider, can I eliminate these? Can I minimize them? Can I use more precise verbs? All right. But watch out. The big thing here, though, is watch out for what other words or phrases you tend to use that create passive voice or wordiness, and put them on your banned words list for future essays. If you get an idea of what phrases you tend to use and how often you tend to use them, then again, you can put them on your radar, you can put them on your banned words list, and then make sure that you revise for them. You can always try Control F searches when you get done with an essay. You can, Control F the word was, Control F the word were, and just see how often it's popping up. And if you see one paragraph where you've got it a lot, again, I bet you could probably revise the language in that paragraph. And that's the key word, is revise. If you want this issue to go away, it's one of the things that you really need to catch on in the revision stage. All right, and then finally, I'm going to take you to the class website, and just want to point out that at the Writing Center tab, if you go to the Writing Center tab right here, there is a section dedicated to passive voice and wordiness, where I'm also going to post this video. And there is a website that covers the 7 deadly sins, quote unquote, of academic writing. And it has a whole section on passive voice, and it has a really good section on wordiness. So again, if you know that you are guilty of wordy sentences and this is something that you need to work on, this does a really nice job of breaking it down for you. And this also is where I got some of those phrases that are common in these kind of issues. All right, so hopefully that helps, and I'll see you in class.